Get real advice from renowned experts and entrepreneurs on today's business leaders. Here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, on today's show, I'm very excited to have Meredith Bell, and she is the founder of Performance Support Systems, and we were graciously connected by a good friend of ours from his podcast, and so I'm really excited to have you on the show today, Meredith, and learn about your business and your experience as an entrepreneur and all the lessons that you can share with our audience. So thank you so much. Can you tell me when you first realized that you were an entrepreneur?
It was sort of by accident, actually. My back was against the wall. I had been in education. I'd always wanted to be a teacher, but I got bored with the routine of teaching after a few years, got my master's, went into school board office administration and realized, gee, I don't do bureaucracy or politics very well either. So it was one of those things. I was so miserable. But I knew I loved working with people. I knew that I was good at teaching. And I just decided to jump out on my own and start my own solo practice. Do it because I still could teach. It was just that I was going to switch my attention to companies and adults. But there was no entrepreneurship in my background. And so I didn't have a role model. And there was no internet back in 1982 when I did that. No one else, none of my other siblings have their own businesses. And so it was, there was no one really to talk to that was in that similar kind of situation. So I gravitated to other business owners and entrepreneurs that I could engage with over the years just to be able to share ideas. But it was sort of accidental. It wasn't a pre-planned kind of thing at all.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good description of an entrepreneur, though. Somebody that's unwilling to tolerate, the status quo, or unwilling to tolerate what's going on. And I think we'd rather, be broke and happy working on our own thing than be miserable and making a bunch of money doing something that we don't want to do. At least I know it's that way for me.
Oh, absolutely. I needed that freedom to be able to call the shots.
Yeah, I think having a partnership of 30 years is a feat in itself.
Well, it is. But you know what? We all had expertise in communication skills. That's really what we were teaching in organizations, whether it's in a family relationship, a marriage, or business, that you're not going to have some conflicts, bumps, or, gorges to cross. But when you have that mutual trust and respect, you can work through anything, really. I think that's the key. And when you don't have that, then there's that sense of, gosh, what's behind what they're doing? What's their motivation? What do they want out of this? Whereas when you have that basic trust, that the overall goal is we want to succeed together. And so that's where, when you have that confidence, nothing can shake that. You might have rough spots, but nothing's going to shake that strong foundation.
What do you think is, because I think this is a really good topic, especially for entrepreneurs. I wouldn't say that most entrepreneurs are fantastic at partnerships. I think some of us are, some of us aren't. You clearly have figured it out, at least at this level. And at what was there like a trial period for you guys to determine if you did want to partner? Did you jump in and it happened to work out?
What we did, Denny and I both reached a point when we were so low that we needed administrative help. And so we decided to rent office space together. This would be equivalent of moving in with someone before you decide to get married, right? That's exactly what we did. We made this commitment. And I still remember how I had trouble sleeping the night before. And so that was our initial step. We thought, let's do some projects together. Let's share some resources and see how that works.
Yeah, that's wise. How long did you end up just sharing office space before you ended up like actually bringing the companies together?
Probably 7 or 8 months.
Gotcha.
It wasn't a real long time.
Yeah, but long enough that you could figure out each other's quirks and if it was a good all that. Yeah. I think one advantage of being entrepreneurs, we're quick starters, right? We can jump in and change things right away and jump in and try to solve problems. However, I don't think that's always to our strength to do that across the board. There's some things we should slow down and do a trial run on and think through differently, right?
I think of my husband and me. He's more the engineer. He used to be a home builder. I am the, let's decide, let's do this. And he's like, well, now wait a minute. And he's got to analyze things. And initially that was kind of challenging. Again, you have to reach that point that you appreciate those differences and you don't resent them. Because I think sometimes conflicts can arise because someone assumes the worst about a person's motives, or they think, oh, they're just trying to be negative, or they're just trying to look at the downside. When in fact, appreciating where they're coming from, if you slow down long enough to explore what's behind the concern that they're expressing, then you discover and can have a much more meaningful and a deeper conversation, because the truth behind, of the fears or concerns can emerge.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely important to be an empathetic listener and just, start out with the basic assumption that you could be completely wrong and be open to a completely different perspective.
And what happens, Gabe, is we get our egos in the way.
Yes.
Because when we hear someone objecting to an idea that we have, and I was this way originally with Denny, because he and I are both pretty, strong personalities. And if he objected to something I brought up, it was like, two things would happen. I'd get irritated, but then also I would think, what's wrong with me? I'd start questioning my own confidence. And it took a while to recognize and not take it personally, but instead step back and look objectively about what he was saying.
Yeah.
And then be able to receive that and respond in a way that, again, encouraged him to talk more about it instead of shutting down the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I think as leaders and entrepreneurs, it's hard. It's like we have to find a balance of asking the right questions and being open to it and really coaching the additional information out of those around us. And then also, I think just as much like respecting the fact that sometimes people don't want to talk about it anymore, or you can't move somebody beyond where they're willing to grow anyway. And it's that balance of really being present in the moment and honoring the relationship. And also for me, it's been learning to trust my intuition and not trying to assume or hope that somebody wants to do more than they're capable or is willing to do more than they're currently doing. It's, I think as entrepreneurs, we're always super optimistic. And so we want to see more, we see more than there may be. So that's the other side. So just really being present in the moment and being aware is obviously a huge piece of it. And it's a journey that I'm still walking and still trying to learn, but it's super important to get our relationships and our partnerships right in our entrepreneurial life. That's for sure.
Well, you're bringing up a good point there. We're all always learning.
Yeah.
Even today, there are times when, we'll be in an owner's call and, one of us just makes an assumption about what the other one says, and we start responding to it without checking, is this what you meant? So, it's a continuous learning process. And I think one of the mistakes we can make is somehow thinking we're going to someday get it all right.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. We're going to try things. Some are going to work and some aren't. And we can learn from all of it.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely an ongoing learning for sure. Because as soon as you think you have it figured out, either you get new people in the mix, which is great, or you have new growth or new systems or new things you have to communicate, which make that a big shift and change. And I'd like to learn more about, and I'm curious about, like you start the business, you realize that you don't do good at bureaucracy, which I don't either, so at all. I've tried so a couple of times, but you step out and you create this, and then you bring in your other partners. What have been some of the kind of the highlights of your entrepreneurial career so far, and what are the things that you're most proud of that you've been able to help other organizations with that you serve?
Probably the biggest thing, this is part of my own core personal values, as well as what our mission is. because as I mentioned, we're all about communication skills. And what is underlying the passion around that is helping people connect in a way that's healthy, emotionally beneficial to everybody. So we eliminate some of this pain that's unnecessary in workplaces and in homes. Because what we have found, first, when we were doing training, and then since 94, we've been a software company. And so probably one of the greatest areas of satisfaction is knowing that we have helped people improve how they interact with others so that they get better results and they are happier. How well are we able to connect and have a positive impact with the people we interact with? So I'm proud of the fact that we've had that kind of impact with a lot of people and a lot of organizations. We genuinely care about them as people. Gabe, when you can provide an experience that helps people feel good about who they are, not just the technical aspect of what you do, because software, could be, hello, very matter of fact, buttoned up, and we're not like that. Paula, who does our technical support, is also a certified practitioner in healing touch. When somebody feels that they've gotten off the phone or off a Zoom call where they actually feel better about themselves, about the situation, that's what we want. That's what we're trying to create, is experiences where people enjoy doing business with us. So they want to come back because they like how it feels to interact with us.
Yeah. That's a good description. It's amazing how we can sometimes, I think we all fall into this, and we've probably all seen it, where people get so focused on just the product or the service they're delivering or just the thing, which is great, but that doesn't give you any competitive advantage, I don't think, anymore in today's world. It truly is how you make people feel, how they interact with you. I had, what comes to mind is I had a vendor that we brought in, and we always onboard our vendors into our culture and teach them about what we do, and really want to support them too. And this vendor of mine last week said, he's like, he works with two of my leaders, and he's like, I've never worked with people so nice as these two guys. And he's like, it's such a great thing to work with. And I was like, I know we're doing business and making money, and all that things that we do need to do, but when you really make somebody feel that special and that cared for, then they're never going to go anywhere else. And man, it took me a lot of years to figure that out, to be honest, but I'm glad I did, because it's really what matters in business, for sure.
Well, it does. Because I think part of what drives us as entrepreneurs is to make a difference, right? It isn't just to make a buck. And so when you can see, like you just did, where this person has, part of what your two leaders are doing is satisfying a very basic human need that we all have: to be seen, to be appreciated, to be valued. And it doesn't take that much. That's the thing we often don't appreciate ourselves, is how just slowing down enough to ask questions, to listen to someone in a way that most people don't take the time to do, it sets you apart. And so you can try all the bells and whistles and, spend a lot of money doing things that don't get you the kind of loyalty that treating people well can do.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, it's definitely the relational side of business is something that I always focus on in our organization, talk to our team and clients about. And I think sometimes in other spaces, people just forget, like, there is no business unless there is that relationship. And like you said, the transactional stuff comes and goes, or doesn't mean anything if you don't really have that foundation. And that's definitely a key part of it. And I know I'm a very avid reader, but I haven't actually gotten through the books that you sent me. I wanted you to share a little bit about the books that you've written, and and share with me what that was.
Oh, thank you. Well, we've got ambitious goals. The book that Denny and I put out together last fall is called Connect with Your Team, and it's about mastering the top 10 communication skills. And things like listening and giving constructive feedback in an encouraging way, Because too often, we see something, it bugs us. We hope the person will figure it out for themselves, right? So we don't have to address it. And many times by the time we do address it, we've built up this anger and resentment and we lash out instead of addressing it in a way that's really helpful to the other person.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to just, in all of these important skills, give simple, clear steps on how to do them well. But then the key thing, Gabe, is to practice. You can't just learn about, it's sort of like paying a golf pro to give you lessons, or a tennis pro. They can show you and you can practice with them. When you want to change any behavior, it doesn't happen overnight, especially if you have another way that you've learned to do it over the years, because now you've got this hardwired pattern that has to be overcome by a new pattern. It's sort of like, you're starting out on this dirt gravel road when you have this other superhighway over here already established. And so it's uncomfortable, it's bumpy. And so one of the other things that we did at the end of the year is Denny wrote a short book called Peer Coaching Made Simple that explains how people can work in partners to help each other be accountable for doing the things they said they were going to do, but also support and encourage them as they're trying to change their behavior. So we have these two books that really can be used in partnership with each other. And we've set a goal. And by the way, Denny has written parallel books for parents, how to connect with your kid, and then parents coaching parents. And so with those 4 books, we've set a goal to sell 1 million copies of our books. And the reason we've set such an audacious goal is because we know the difference that this material can make in the lives of other people. And we thought, well, to get tens of thousands, or thousands of teams out there means we need to get a lot of books in the hands of other people. Well, the skills we teach here help you think differently and act differently.
Yeah. And you said something early on in our time here together. You said I allowed this person to bother me, or you allowed this situation to kind of run back and forth in your head over and over. And I'm curious, what, just to touch on briefly, how much of the journey of communication and really being an effective communicator that helps other is the internal conversation of getting to know yourself better, and to and to also take ownership for how you're showing up.
I had this a few years ago with someone that was not an employee of our company, but someone I was collaborating with at the time. And I thought, man, I just need to, talk to this person about what it is they're saying. And this is where somebody can turn it around. So this is addressing your question of how much is it inside of you. Dan talked about that before he goes into a conversation with someone he's about to meet with. He makes a list of the things about that person that he appreciates about them. And it helps him then be in this mindset of really valuing all they bring to the table before they come in. So he doesn't read his list to them when they come in, but they sense that appreciation from him in the way he interacts with them. So when you think about someone that you've had, and issues with in the past, if that's what you're conjuring up before you interact with them the next time, then you enter in anxious, uptight, ready for that fight, right? Whereas if you take time, as I did in this call with this individual, I wrote down all the things he did that were good for me and that were beneficial. And I had a whole different approach to him when he and I spoke. I didn't have that need to point out all these other things because I got to thinking about, well, what's my contribution in this? How am I contributing to this in the way I'm responding when he brings up something? So I think that when we look at what's our role and in responsibility in this relationship, it makes a huge difference in how we actually what we bring to the table. Another aspect of your question is about visualization. If we imagine the conversation going well and see ourselves in advance responding calmly, not taking it personally, that also has a huge impact about what actually happens in that conversation. So the conversation itself, there's a prelude to it that is huge in terms of our own self-talk, our own thinking and picturing the best in that person instead of the worst.
Yeah, I think those are two excellent points, and like to having gratitude for them and the positive things ahead of time. And yeah, you're right. I do. One thing, I don't know where I picked it up or learned it, or I do visualize a lot of my conversations ahead of time, and I think I can layer onto that, like imagining it going well, and like I'm not thinking that, but I think I could probably do more more effectively think about how it could be going well. So that's definitely a good idea. And yeah, man, it's like communication is it's the beginning and the end of leadership, and I always say everything rises and falls on leadership. And so it's so key to not only master it, but maybe that's not even the right term, but just continually work on it. And I love how you've just set an example, and you're passionate about continual self-development, your own personal growth. Because I know from the years that I've been entrepreneur now that my organization can't grow if I don't grow, and like the leaders around me can't grow. Like if you become stagnant, everything starts to suffer and fall apart. And it's the personal development is huge. And of all the personal development things, I think communication is absolutely paramount to be focused on consistently, if not all the time, right? So
Well, and I think one of our responsibilities too as entrepreneurs, when we have a team of people, or even with your business partners, is how can I elevate this person so that they, appreciate their own value? I think that's really a key aspect of leadership. And that goes to the heart of communication as well. How am I speaking to this person that challenges them and yet encourages them, that they know I believe in their abilities, I believe in what they can do? And that's the other side of what Dan Sullivan talked about with appreciation is we want them to appreciate their own worth and value. It's hard for somebody to be interested in giving their all if they don't believe they're really capable of it. It's too easy to settle for the status quo. And if we're not modeling for our own people, what is it like to grow and learn? And I'll tell you one other key skill that people tend to avoid because they think it's going to cause people to think less of them is apologizing. Too often, I think I've seen where people are hesitant, leaders are hesitant to apologize because they think, oh gosh, they'll think less of me as a leader. Well, I'm going to tell you that it's the opposite. When you're willing to acknowledge that you made a mistake and do it as quickly as you can, don't try to dance around it. Don't try to point the finger at someone else. Own it fast and say, and so you can move on from it and they can move on from it. And what you've done is given everybody around you permission to also be human. Whereas if we can help them learn from their experiences and guide them through questions and be willing to own it ourselves and apologize if we've said or done something that was, unkind or uncalled for with someone else, just say, you know what? I did lose my temper there. And I regret doing that. And I apologize that I handled it that way. And then you can let it go. You don't have to keep beating yourself up over it. But, if you've made a really serious transgression with someone, you broke trust, or, you said or did something really hurtful, it's a good idea to say, well, what can I do to make it right?
yeah.
And so just asking, where are they with this? What do they need from us right now is really big.
I'm glad you said that. I think that's definitely a mark of a true leader and somebody that really cares and does want to communicate and serve, of like, not just apologize, which you're 100% right. you need to apologize and make mistakes. We all make them, and it does build trust and respect. But then to also say, like, what can I do to make it right? Because there's cases where I think people, I've heard people say, well, you heard me out, and that's all I need. I just, I felt heard, which is probably a huge majority of the time. And then the other times, like, you really can ask them to engage in the repair of the relationship. And that's, I think, also important, because collaboratively, if you're really working towards repairing things, then I think that can, no matter how big or small, I think that goes a long way. Instead of, obviously, you can give an apology the wrong way and apologize and then go back to your same behavior again, and that's not good either. So yeah.
The other thing that a strong leader can do is simply ask people to hold up. That's the thing, when we get our egos involved, and then it escalates to, you're insulting me. And it was just, sometimes the other person's enthusiastic about what they're going to say, or in Denny's case, he would say, I was afraid I'd forget it, if I didn't jump in and say what I wanted to say. But it's that learning. But here's the key, Gabe. Tone of voice means a lot too. Because if you say it like this, I wasn't finished yet.
Yeah.
That kind of shuts things down. But if you say it with, whoops, I wasn't finished yet, please let me finish, or something, like that, where simply a kind reminder to the person. And so looking for ways, in fact, if somebody says, I'm going to make a commitment to improve X, then a good response is, what can I do to support you in that? What would support look like for you? Because I agree, that would be a good thing for you to improve in. What specifically are you going to do differently? How can I help you along the way if I see that you're not following through on that?
Right.
And so just asking the question, the other person is now buying in to this commitment and can give you guidance on what support would look like for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Meredith. I think you just have a wealth of wisdom and just practical things that we can all do to improve our communication. And I'm really excited about your goal, getting your book out to 1 million people. So definitely share that with the audience as well.
Sure. Our website is growstrongleaders.com. And my podcast is on there as well, where you were recently a guest. And we have information there about our products as well as our books. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and probably most active on LinkedIn. So would be happy to connect with folks on any of those platforms.
All right, terrific. Well, we'll share all that in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on. We'll definitely have you back again soon and see how your big goal is going. And
thank you, Gabe. I appreciate it. It's great being with you.
This show is brought to you by Today's Business Leaders. Learn more at our website, todaysbusinessleaders.com. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today.